going with the skirt so short? Oh my gosh, even with the safety shorts underneath, I just feel exposed. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Priscilla. I'm a Nigerian women's wear designer based in the UK. If this is your first time seeing me, hi. If you're one of my returning K-divas, what's up? Thank you for coming back again. In this video, I'm going to be attempting to create a pleated tennis skirt. Now this style of skirt you would typically see in the game of tennis, one on court, and it just looks so fabulous. It has made its way into mainstream fashion and people have so much fun styling it, dressing it up or down. And I have 3 of these skirts already, so I thought it was time to actually make my own. It is typically very short. That I find that it is a nice way to have it short. It just looks a lot nicer on me because I'm a petite girl. So I plan to actually add a pair of safety shorts underneath, so even if the wind blows, I am not disgraced and my undergarment is not exposed. Okay, so the plan is to create the sewing pattern for the skirt and the safety shorts, cut and stitch everything, show you any changes, what the fit is like, and show you the final piece at the end. So make sure to watch up until the end to see the full process. Okay, if you haven't subscribed on JDK Divas Farm already, make sure to click that subscribe button down below and make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you end up enjoying it. Enough talking, enough waffling, let's get into sewing. My fabric of choice for this project is this yellow Duchess satin. This fabric has a little bit of body and it's yellow, which is one of my absolute favorite colors. I ended up using 2 meters of fabric for this skirt. I also have a yellow invisible zip. This one is too long for the skirt, but it's the only one I had, which is why I ended up using it. I also grabbed some interfacing, which I'm going to be ironing on the waistband to give it more stability and structure along the waist of the skirt. Now that I have the materials out of the way, these are the measurements I ended up using to create the sewing pattern, and I would recommend working with yours or that of your client for the best fit and outcome. First thing we're going to be doing is creating the skirt pattern, and to do that I have a large piece of pattern paper here, and on one side I'm going to be drawing a vertical line. This is going to guide me to decide on the width and the waistline of the skirt. Now my skirt length is 15 inches, which is quite short. You can work with whatever length that you are comfortable with. And I'm going in here to mark that 15 inches across like so. I added a little bit extra just for my hemline allowance. And once I had that marked across, I'm going in to draw the waistline or the top edge of my skirt. Now to determine how wide your skirt should be, which is the most important part of this pattern, you will need to divide your waistline by 2, and then to that measurement you add the number of pleats times the width of your pleats plus 2.5 inches. For mine, I divided my waistline of 29 inches by 2 to give me 14.5 inches, and that I wanted 8 pleats across the front of the skirt, so that will be 8 times 1.5 inches, which is the width of the pleats, and then you add 2.5 inches. That total number is going to become my skirt width, and I ended up creating a rectangle that was that wide, added a seam allowance all the way around. And I'm just going in here to mark my pleats. Now the distance between each pleat is 1.75 inches, and then the pleat itself is 1.5 inches. So starting from this edge, I'm just going to be marking that 1.75 from the edge and then mark my 1.5 inch pleat. I'm just raising the line upwards like so with this green pen, indicating the exact notch points that I would need to pleat in. I'm also marking the middle of the pleat, so I notch that point as well, and essentially I would need to repeat this. So you mark 1.75 between each pleat, and then the pleat width itself, which is what you fold and stitch away, is 1.5 inches. I think this is the part I found really tricky, because you have to calculate the right number of pleats, and when you stitch them away or when they are tucked into the waistline of the skirt still needs to fit your waist. So once you've done this, I always recommend you go back and double check count the number of pleats and everything, make sure that the total addition actually fits around your waist once we've stitched away those pleats. So this is what my pattern is looking like. I extended the pleat point downwards because I want the pleats to be stitched down 3.5 inches along the skirt. This is what really gives the skirt its iconic feel and look. Along this edge where my zip is going to sit, there's a 1.5 extension which is 5 inches tall, and it would help to create a bottom skirt pleat. If you have watched this far and you haven't given this video a thumbs up and you haven't subscribed, this is your cue to do so. Now I'm going to move on to creating the short pattern. I'm starting off with the front of the short, and I'm drawing a vertical line that's going to become my side seam, and on the top of this line I'm going to draw a line that's perpendicular to that. This will become my waistline. From this horizontal line I'm going to be marking the vertical distance from my waist to my hip, as well as my crouch depth. My crouch depth is typically 2 inches below my hip line, but I always recommend you measure yours so you have a better fit for yourself. Now I'm squaring those points across like so. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to go to my waistline and mark 1/4 of my waist measurement plus 1 inch waist dart and some ease. This could be 1/4 of an inch. And once I have that marked along the waist, I'm going to move on to the hip and mark 1/4 of my hip measurement plus 1/2 inch ease. And along the crouch depth, I'm going to be marking 1/4 of my hip measurement plus 2.5 inches. Once I have that marked along that line horizontally, I'm going to be connecting the points like so, connecting waist to hip and then hip to the crouch depth line. Now I'm going to move on to my waistline, and I'm going to be marking the dart away halfway through that waistline, and the dart itself is 4.5 inches tall. This I ended up not even stitching into the shorts, I just pinned them in, but it's good to just have them there in case you want to actually stitch the dart away for your own design. Now the length of the shorts should be shorter than the skirt. Mine was 14 inches. I actually found this a bit long. I feel like I should have made it 13 because it was peeking through my skirt, which I was not a huge fan of. Now around the thigh, I ensured that it was really nice and loose, so I just squared it across from my crouch depth line all the way to the hemline of the shorts. This I'm going to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around so it allows me to connect to the back. Now I'm going into this area of the shorts pattern, and I'm finding the middle point between the waist and the hip, and I'm going to draw a line that cuts right through the middle. Along this line I'm going to be slashing and spreading to create the back shorts pattern. This is like a quick way to create the back of shorts, of trousers, using your front as your template. And I'm just cutting this out first so it's easier to work with, and now I'm slashing from the center front edge all the way to the side seam, just cutting as close as possible to the edge, and then I'm going to just put some pattern weights down to hold this front piece in place. And then that back end I am going to be spreading by 2 inches. This is going to accommodate my butt and my hip on the back of the shorts. Once I have that in place, I'm going in to draw in the center back edge in this case, which is what I am creating. Draw that like so. And then I'm going to come down to the crouch depth, which I'm going to be extending by 1/2 inch and dropping by 1/2 inch. That's just going to give a little bit of leg room around your hip and your thigh for a more comfortable fit on the back of the shorts. And I'm just going in to trace off that point like so, adding the extended edge for the back short pattern. I'm also going to draw in the waistline, transfer the dart points because those are very important. Those I'm going to be pleating away when I cut this pattern onto fabric. And then I'm going to be drawing in the side seam for the back of the shorts. I'm drawing in the hemline like so, as well as the inseam or the inner leg for my back. Now I'm going to close off or join my front pattern, which helped me to create my back piece, and then I'm going to add my annotations, my grain line, any other notch that I think would be important before cutting out my back shorts pattern. The last pattern I made out of the camera is the waistband, and the waistband is your waist measurement plus 1 inch for the seam allowance, and mine is 2.5 inches wide. That I've cut out, added my annotations, and I'm going to be cutting just one for that. Also have the short pieces here for the front and for the back. And once all the patterns are out of the way, it's time to go in to cut the fabric. I'm going to be working with this beautiful yellow Duchess satin that just makes me happy looking at it. The color is so nice and vibrant. I'm going to cut a pair for the back and one pair for the front. I'm going to cut a pair for the skirt, so we have a whole piece that goes around the waist. And I'm also going to cut out the waistband and add some interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. This is optional, but for the skirt, don't forget to cut in those notches, because having those notches will just make pleating away this side of the skirt a whole lot easier. Alright, quick status update. I am done cutting out all of the pieces of the skirt, the shorts, and the waistband. I also went in to even fuse the waistband with the interfacing, so it's nice and stiff along the waist. This skirt is just giving me, like, I thought about it when I was sleeping. That's how bad. You know, when you start thinking about projects in your sleep, you know it's deep. So I have cut in notches for all of the pleat points, and the plan is to go in and stitch down the pleats for the front and the back, join the side seams and leave the side open for the zip, add the short, add the waistband and finish it up. This is just what everything is looking like. So I have my skirt pieces here. I have two of this long piece. This corner with the edge is where the zip is going to sit, so the zip is going to be there. I have the waistband, which I have added some interfacing on the wrong side, and then I have my front and back short pieces. This I have two of each, and this is like a great way to add lining to short dresses and skirts without having to add extra lining. So the short is kind of like your safety underneath. So I'm going to get into sewing. On here you can see I've notched all of my dart points, pleat points, sorry. So I'm just going to pin them down, pleat away, pin, and try and keep all the pleats in one direction, stitch them down, and then I'll check in with you guys. Before we jump into the skirt sewing, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you are enjoying it so far, and subscribe if you haven't already. Now for the skirt sewing, I'm going to start off with the pleating, and we're actually going to hand pleat everything on this skirt. So if you have notched those points along the waistline, you can simply fold the pleats in and add pins, add necessary points. I ended up pinning everything along the waist, in the middle, and at the hem of the skirt. So I ended up with a piece that looked like this. It was a lot of pins, but it will just make pressing this thing a lot easier, and just keep it in shape until you have ironed it. Now I'm ironing on the wrong side first. It doesn't really matter. I just found doing this first before flipping to the right side would just secure the pins. So if I go on the right side of the fabric and I wanted to remove any pins, there would not be the possibility of the pleat folding away on itself. So these are repeated for both sides of the skirt, and this is what it looks like. I find that the piece on the right looks a lot more evenly spaced compared to the piece on the left, but let's just work with this for now. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be sewing up the pleats from 3.5 inches up until the waistline. So I'm starting from that point and I'm sewing to the waistline. You can start from the waistline and stitch downwards, but I just did it in this direction because of how my pins were placed on the fabric. These are repeated for all of the pleats on the skirt. This was the most satisfying part of making the skirt, ironing the pleats, stitching them down, and before going in to join the side seams together. This you would need to do putting right sides together of your fabric, and I'm going to be sewing up the side that doesn't have the zip. This I'm going to sew on a 1 centimeter seam allowance before going in to overlock it just to secure it on the inside of the skirt. After overlocking, I went into iron that side seam and I just placed it on my mannequin to just check for everything. and this looks so cute. It looks so good, and I'm feeling very happy and proud of myself so far. This is what it looks like up close. When you get edge stitches correctly, it's just so satisfying to look at. Now I'm going to set that aside and focus on working on my shorts. I have pinned right sides together of the left leg of the front to the back and the right leg of the front to the back, and I'm going to be joining the inner seam and the outer seam first before joining anything else. Remember to leave a side open for your zip and let that side be the same side as you've left open for your skirt. To do this, you can decide that you want your zip on the right side and mark that side for your shorts and for the skirt as well. After stitching up the side and inner seam, I went ahead to overlock my shorts all the way around before going in to join the crouch. So I'm putting right sides together and I'm joining center front edge to center front edge and then center back to center back. This I'm going to be sewing all the way because I don't need to leave any point open along that crouch seam since the zip is going to be on the side of the shorts. Now I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, just taking my time as I go around curved points so everything matches nicely. Once I'm done sewing this up with a normal stitch, I'm going to take this to my overlocker and I'm going to overlock this entire seam, give it a nice press, and then it's ready to be attached to the waistline of the skirt. With the shorts done and out of the way, I am going to be pinning it into the waistline of the skirt, and I am going to be joining them in such a way that I would pleat or fold away the dart that the short has along the waistline. So I'm starting off with one edge and then I'm going to go and match side seam to side seam for both sides of the skirt and the short. And then I'm going to pleat in the darts along the waistline so I have everything ready to be stitched in place. Okay, fitting time. This is the skirt on. I think the first thing that is catching my eye is the pleats are bending in this direction. I'm not sure why it's doing that. I think maybe when I was pleating it down, stitching it down here, I might have pulled the fabric too much, so everything is kind of bending, which it shouldn't do. I would rather have them straight, but at this point it doesn't look too bad. I have the shorts on underneath. That's the shorts there. So far so good. So far so good. It's really short. Where am I going with the skirt so short? Oh my gosh, even with the safety shorts underneath, I just feel exposed. We'll see how I style it. But I'm just going to go in to stitch the waistline of the shorts and the skirt together. I think I might even stitching the waistband in one go and then fix the zip on this open side seam to finish everything up as an action plan. I have gone in to pin the waistband onto the waistline of the skirt and shorts combo. This I have pressed in half and I've put right sides together of the waistband to the waistline of the piece, and I'm going to be sewing everything in one go. Initially I wanted to stitch the waistline of the shorts to the skirt first, and then I realized everything is going to be fitted along the same place. Might as well just stitch it all in one go, which is what I am doing here. After doing that, I'm going back in with a bias tape to finish up the waistline. I didn't want to risk overlocking this and breaking my overlocker needles, which is why I am using a bias binding or bias tape to wrap around the seam on the waistline of this piece. Once I was done doing that, I knew this was ready for me to add the zip on the side seam. On the open side seam edge like so, I'm going to be taking my invisible zip and I'm going to be pinning it into that edge. Now I'm going to be joining it in such a way that I'm stitching the zip into the side seam of the shorts and the skirt together. So I'm going to be starting from the top of the waistband edge and then just add some pins to keep everything in place. This I will do for both sides of the zip tape, and I'm pinning it in such a way that I get as close as possible to the edge on the bottom where we stitched initially for our shorts. So I'm going to take this to my domestic machine that has the photograph one invisible zip, and I'm going to be unraveling that zip as I sew. If you haven't seen my invisible zip tutorial, I'm going to link it here so you guys can check it out for a detailed step-by-step guide on how to fix invisible zips. So I'm going to stitch down this side in this direction and turn to the other side to sew in the other side of the zip. Now for the bottom edge of the skirt that is still open, I am going to be sewing it this way so it's a separate panel from the short itself, and I'm going to be sewing it from the hemline upwards and around that corner there. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a mini pleat that would sit underneath the zip. This particular part, I found that if you don't actually align things and make them match in a correct manner, once you turn the skirt inside out, it actually creates a weird puckering that I really try to get rid of, but it's still stuck there, and that bothers me so much. So I just want you guys to be aware of that. The last step to finish this skirt is to finish up the hemline, and first off I'm overlocking along the hemline of the skirt, and then I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to be folding by 1 centimeter and stitching around all the way. Once you've stitched this down, you will need to go back and press that hemline and just reinforce your pleats so everything looks nice and clean to finish up the skirt. So this is the skirt all done. It's quite short, I have to say, but I think it's like a great summer piece, and it has a shorts underneath, so you're not completely exposed when you have it on. You can play around with the length, you can make it shorter or longer if you want. I would say work with a woven fabric that has a little bit of weight so it holds those pleats in place, and I ended up using about 2 meters of fabric to create this skirt. If you enjoyed watching this tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up. If you'll be recreating this, don't forget to tag me on social media at KimDaveDesigns. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.